Hello and welcome, Mark Homer here. So this is a really pertinent video. We're going to talk about house prices rising, we're going to talk about energy costs which keep going up, and we're going to talk in general about the cost of living crisis. And I'm going to reveal some ways in which you can attack this cost of living crisis. Before we get started, make sure you like, subscribe and hit the bell. So the first story, and I think one of the most important, especially if you're in property or you've got a business or you're in construction or you're in manufacturing, you're running a factory, energy prices, especially electricity and gas, have gone nuts. I've got a quote sitting on my desk for an electricity deal for the communal areas of a building. So this is a block of flats, these are the corridors and the stairwells, to pay for the lifts and the lighting and the CCTV and all this sort of stuff. We were paying 11p per kilowatt for this electricity sort of pre-pandemic. I've got a quote on my desk for 33 pence per kilowatt. So that is triple. And actually I've got a sort of out of contract rate offer of 40p per kilowatt. So this is a sort of 3 to 4 times increase in electricity. Why? Well, pandemic has meant that factories, consumers, everybody who's come out of lockdown are sort of working double time, using a lot more energy. The demand has gone nuts. The supply reduced somewhat during the pandemic because not as many people and businesses needed it because they were shut. And of course, off the back of that, it has then been exacerbated by the war in Ukraine. As there's more and more expectation that Russia will reduce gas and oil supplies, as they have done this morning. They've actually turned the gas off to Bulgaria and Poland this morning because they're refusing to pay in rubles, and as per their contractual agreement, they only want to pay in euros. This has meant that the world gas price, the world oil price, has gone up significantly. Huge amounts of electricity are generated from gas. So there are massive increases. Now, if you've got a commercial building or some sort of apartment building or maybe an office, maybe an industrial unit, a factory, and you're paying with a commercial meter, you're probably just about feeling these extra rates now. If you've got to go into a new contract, you're going to be paying these rates now. If you're a homeowner, well, it's stepped, people are on the cap, and residential rates are rising much slower. But these increases are coming. Is it going to drop back down again? Well, that may be the case, but we've sort of got to behave as though this is the new normal, and we've got to find ways of reducing and controlling these bills because it is a huge deal. If you've got houses of multiple occupation, you're paying gas bills. It's the same. It's maybe 300% increase. You're paying the bills. Lots of tenants regulate the temperature of their room by opening the windows rather than turning the thermostat. So this is a big deal. Contrast this with somewhere like France, where their energy bills have gone up about 5% through this. Why? Because they've got stacks of nuclear power stations across the country. They made the investment. They clearly planned a lot better than we did. And they've got the right type of power generation to get themselves through. If we rewind back, this whole thing probably started with Tony Blair and the whole sort of net zero thing. You're probably not aware, but on your gas and electricity bill, you've got a levy which is imposed by the government. It's taken to pay for new green energies. And I think during this period, if there was ever a time for them to reduce and remove these levies, even for a period, this would be it. Doesn't look like they're going to do it at the moment. I think an even bigger problem is the fact that they haven't planned sufficiently. If we rewind right back, they were told for many years that they needed to get building nuclear power stations. That's clearly the solution for the interim until all of the sort of green energy, the wind turbines and all of the hydro-based energy generation systems come on stream. Nuclear is that interim solution. It takes many years to build, very expensive. So this planning should have been done a long time ago. Few false starts. David Cameron and George Osborne were cozying up to the Chinese. I think Theresa May had to cancel all of that. So we're years and years behind, very reliant on gas. for our electricity generation, and look where we are now. The US, which is actually the biggest producer of oil, has got fracking, and they've got relatively cheap oil coming out from that source. So their energy bills are not going up anything like the level that ours are. So some solutions. Clearly, the key to this is being able to shop around. I'd always recommend looking on Money Saving Expert, Martin Lewis. He has a cheap energy club and a set of recommendations to move your gas and electricity supplier. He sort of shows you where to look, how to move them, and you can do an online comparison. Sometimes, often at the moment, you're better staying where you are because you're on the cap, but increasingly, we're going to be coming off the cap, and I think in October there's another increase, and we're going to be paying the market rate. So you need to be moving your energy supplier, or at least looking at what other rates there are from other suppliers really frequently. Otherwise, you're going to end up in a difficult situation. I think the next thing is you need to really focus on all of your energy consumption. So that could be down to bringing your home or your rental properties to an EPC level of let's say C or a B or better. I think residential properties, if you're renting them out, are going to need to be a C within a few years anyway. So that might mean installing insulation. It might mean upgrading your sort of windows to double glazing. It could mean a new boiler, and there are some grants to support you with that. If you don't do that, it won't be too long until even in your own home, the government is going to start encouraging you and then forcing you to do it by getting mortgage lenders to insist that your house is an EPC level of X, Y, or Z. I don't know, maybe they're going to start charging more if it's not, and maybe they're going to start refusing to lend to you if your home isn't of the right EPC rating. Other things you can do are intelligent thermostat systems. I've got a Nest system in my own home. I've got those in sort of HMO rental properties where I'm paying the bills. They're intelligent because when there aren't people there, it generally turns the heating down. It has a band within which the temperature can be set, and it understands what the weather is. So when the weather gets hotter, it reduces the amount of electricity or gas that's going into the boiler. And clearly when it gets colder, it can start that process earlier, probably reducing the amount of energy that you're consuming. I think the next thing to do is to revisit photovoltaics, so PV, or maybe you put panels on your roof to heat the water, so solar panels for electricity or water heating. I'm certainly looking at that on apartment buildings at the moment. You could do that on your own home. It got to the stage where the feed-in tariff, the money you got for running it, reduced so much it wasn't worth it. But now electricity has increased so much. PV, panels, other forms of green energy, maybe ground source heat pump, maybe air source heat pump, but be careful with that because I think the technology is relatively infantile, and if your property is not particularly airtight, actually you'll end up just burning a hell of a lot of electricity to run the heating system if you've got air source heat pump. But if you've got a newish property, they can be quite good, and they will get better and better. But I think panels on the roof are going to become more and more prevalent, and there's permitted development rights. It's less of an issue in terms of planning consent. So I think I've been speaking to suppliers of and installers of panels, and they're saying they've already got sort of big backlogs building, and there's potentially some government money. So I would really focus on trying to get ahead and trying to get stuff like that installed, especially if your property is sort of south facing and you get the sun a lot of the day. You can install batteries as well, so that a lot of that energy is sort of captured and harnessed when the sun's shining. I think Tesla do some good batteries for the home, and you really need to focus on those green energies to control these bills. So people are always asking, should I take a fixed rate out on energy? It's a little bit like taking a fixed rate mortgage or taking insurance out on something. You'll generally pay more over the long run. If you've got the cash to ride the peaks and troughs, you're probably better going into a variable, depending on what rate they're giving you. Clearly with home energy bills, it is quite customary to sort of fix for maybe 1, 2, 3 years, but you may decide you take a shorter fix if you've got the cash to sort of ride it. I think the overall amount that you will spend over the long run is likely to be less if you take a shorter fix. However, not everybody's got the money to sort of ride the peaks. So if you haven't got that sort of cash, it's like an insurance policy. You'll pay a little bit more for it, and you won't get caught out if things really go up and you can't afford your energy bill that month. So staying on the cost of living theme, we've got news that Netflix has dropped over 50% because people have been cancelling their subscriptions because they're worried about other costs in the home. AJ Bell, a stockbroker, a little bit like Hargreaves Lansdown, say that the amount of money that people are investing in ISAs and in funds and in shares, this is consumers, has reduced. They took 1.8 billion in the first quarter of last year, and the first quarter of this year they took 1.6 billion. There are other platforms on the stock exchange reporting similar information, and I suspect that's just going to continue as we come off these price caps and more costs find their way onto the supermarket shelves. You'll notice just in the last week, lots of news about avian bird flu. Feed prices have gone nuts for chickens. Lots of wheat was coming out of Ukraine. Lots and lots of issues in production in food because of electricity going up. Not enough staff. Brexit's caused issues with the importation of workers. So there's a lot of cost price inflation building, has been building for many months. And now the supermarkets are having to relent and they're increasing prices, which obviously they really don't want to do. I suspect a price war probably will break out amongst a few of the supermarkets, but you're going to see huge cost price inflation in food. One of the main, if not the main component in all of these products, it's the energy to make it, and then the oil, the diesel to transport it around on trucks, trains. It's the transport. And of course, another friend I spoke to only at the weekend, he has a factory in China. He produces hosiery and socks. He's saying that, pre-pandemic, a container, 40-foot container from China would cost him maybe $1,500, maybe $2,000 to get it here. He's saying it's still $20,000. So all of your products from Amazon, other goods that you're buying for the home, they all have to be transported, and a huge part of those extra transport costs go straight into all the clothes and all the goods that you buy. So if you haven't seen price increases, then they're coming. The CPI is reacting. I think at the moment the Bank of England says inflation is about 5 or 6% on their basket of goods in the consumer price index. Clearly they don't include housing and lots of other elements. So the inflation that you're experiencing in your basket could be higher, and I think it's going to carry on building. So for those people who are not investing in their ISA or in their funds because they can't afford to, because they need their money for their rent and their gas and their electricity, I can understand that. Surely you would stop that over being evicted from your home. But for those that are sort of, stopping their investments because they're concerned the market's going to drop or this is going to create a big bang, which it could do, I think, trying to drag that crystal ball up and make that connection is not a good idea. I think what you really need to be doing is making a sort of monthly investment, pound cost average it. You don't know whether you're getting a good price or not. Just invest for the long run. It's a little bit like property. In fact, it's pretty much impossible to time these markets over the short term with any accuracy. So just keep on doing those monthly investments, keep on sort of buying into the market, and over the long run, you should do really well. House prices keep on going. We've heard lots of commentators over the last few months say, by the time we get into 2022, there's the cost of living issues, interest rates are going up. people are going to have less money in their pocket. House prices are going to, the growth is going to slow, or they're going to take a tumble. Well, just the opposite is happening. The last few months, Rightmove has said the last 2 months have been the most demand versus supply, the biggest imbalance in its history. And of course, Rightmove is at the front of the property buying chain. If you have a pipeline, somebody looks at a property, Rightmove registers what the property goes on at and what demand there is for certain properties, and then later on in the chain you'd get the lenders, Nationwide, whatever, they would maybe report sort of 2-3 months after the property actually completes, and then you get Land Registry maybe after that. So at the moment it doesn't show any signs of abating. People have still got cash, apparently, from saved during the pandemic, which is probably helping with some of these cost of living increases, not helping everybody. Who knows how long that cash carries on for. Interest rates, I suppose, are still relatively low at 0.75%. You can still get a 5-year fix, probably at 1.5% to 2% range, so still relatively cheap. Yes, interest rates have got to go up. Why? Because inflation is building. Clearly, Bank of England can't do anything about imported inflation, world gas prices or world electricity prices, or the price of Brent crude oil. But domestic inflation, so, prices of your goods on the shelf, maybe food, clothing, all that sort of stuff, they're concerned that those prices are lifting, and they want to keep a cap on that. So interest rates look like they're going to carry on going up. Although an article here from David, written by David Blanchflower, who was at the Monetary Policy Committee, it looks like he's now writing for the Daily Mirror. He thinks that the Bank of England should actually look at reducing interest rates, which, okay, fine, when there's a cost of living crisis on, maybe that is a solution, but surely that would just stoke the inflationary fire. And that's surely something that none of us want. So it's a finely balanced decision. Do I think interest rates are steaming back up to 5%? Doesn't look very likely at all. In fact, if you watch the last inflation report, the MPC are saying that, whilst this isn't necessarily all transitory, lots of this stuff is out of their control. It's, sort of international, and lots of it's energy based, and it's already happened. And if it has already happened and it doesn't keep happening, then once it's fed through, then inflation should drop. Not saying that's what's going to happen, because remember, inflation, interest rate, stock market, price predictions and house price predictions are impossible to make in the short term, and people that do make them might get lots of headlines and lots of attention, but they're usually wrong. Still on house prices, why are they increasing? Well, I think people are still moving out of areas that they don't necessarily need to be. Loads of people were sort of central London or certainly sort of within the M25. Lots of those people don't need to be there anymore because their companies are letting them commute. So maybe they're in the office 2-3 days a week. So instead of being in central London, maybe now they live, I don't know, maybe they live in the East Midlands, or maybe they commute from the home counties. So there has been a definite shift in people moving out. They've gone for space, they've gone for bigger properties, and that seems to have continued. I thought it would reverse once the pandemic sort of started winding down, but it doesn't seem like that trend is reversing. More and more people seem to be doing that. So as they move out, one of my friends invests in sort of SW10, SW5. He says to me, flats in those areas have dropped 25 to 30%, which, just sounds nuts to me. But I started having a look at comparables on Rightmove Sold, and, they've taken a big hit because, they were clearly a lot more expensive. There were loads and loads of money, north of £500, often £1,000 a foot, that sort of stuff. And, it's a one-bed flat could cost you £1 million in some of those areas, and if you're looking at a one-bed flat in, say, I don't know, Surrey, and let's say it's costing you sort of a third, then that looks very, very cheap, doesn't it? Especially when you only have to commute in sort of 2-3 days a week, and that means maybe some people move out even further and buy a house somewhere. So there's still a big shift going on, and it looks like that's still got further to roll. Not saying house prices are going to carry on steaming up for ages, and at some point it'll all go bang like it always does. And if you look back to the 70s, huge amount of inflation, the market went absolutely nuts, and then at the end there was a big bang. House prices, recession, is there going to be one? Are house prices going to crash? Absolutely, at some point. I just don't know when that is. In fact, it probably should have happened early part of 2020 when the pandemic started. That there was nothing like shutting the market down to create that situation. But Boris pumped £400 billion into the market, and they printed a load of money, a load of QE. So it fixed the issue for now. Who knows what policy decisions they're going to make with all of this sort of cost of living at the moment. It sort of looks like Rishi's keeping his powder dry, because I think he's waiting to see what happens to these energy prices before October, which is probably quite smart really, because they go up and down. I know gas has sort of surged again this morning. Now Putin's pressed his button and shut the gas off to Bulgaria and to Poland. But this is sort of not finished. There's still a lot of space to go, and sort of to think just from a layman's perspective, 300 to 400% increase is such a massive increase over such a short period of time. Surely that would encourage loads of producers to just get producing. I know and to start pumping this out, to take advantage of this, to make all this extra money. Clearly, lots of them will be doing that, but it takes time. It takes time for them to ramp production up. And I would have thought that with gas and electricity prices and oil prices at these sorts of levels, it would encourage and enable a lot of exploration that was not viable prior to these price increases, which naturally will bring more supply on. And as more supply comes onto the market, then the price should drop, as long as demand doesn't keep going up. Another aspect to this is Biden. He's probably not cozied up to the Saudi Arabians enough. He's probably not, dealt with the Iranian issue in a way that they and maybe the UAE would like. And I understand they're not taking his calls. Those guys could pump more oil. They could reduce some of these energy prices. Qatar's got a huge amount of gas. I'm sure he could do the same thing there if he sort of gave them a few concessions. I suspect he's maybe not the best man for this job at the moment. I mean, he looks half asleep most of the time. So, there may be some sort of change in the White House. There's an election coming. I know it's sort of still a couple of years away, but as that gets closer and closer, and it looks like maybe a Republican returns to the White House, not saying it's Trump, who knows who it's going to be, but say they're a bit more energy friendly, a little bit more Middle Eastern sort of friendly, maybe give those guys a little bit more they want, they could start pumping. Soon as they pump more, OPEC, they go to their meetings, they say we're going to increase production, the oil price could reduce significantly. So that will be interesting to watch. Another big element to this whole sort of cost of living crisis and production, and the fact that we haven't got enough goods, certainly cars and lots of other products, there is a shortage of, is the lack of labour. Lots of Eastern Europeans went home through Brexit. Loads and loads of them went home during the pandemic. And lots of people maybe in their 50s took early retirement just because companies didn't need them, and they haven't come back. Some of them are returning to the workplace. So this has created a situation where there's maybe 1.2 million people at last count that are missing from the labour market. So quite the opposite of unemployment. Now, linked to this clearly has been the big sort of backlash against immigration, and Brexit probably to some extent came off the back of that. I think lots of people think the immigration issue has been dealt with, and there are less people coming to the United Kingdom, wages are rising, everything's great. I did hear some quite interesting statistics just the other evening, in that in 2021 there were a record number of visas issued to students, loads and loads of family visas issued, Boris is over in India sort of negotiating with them to start sort of issuing Indians work visas to come over. So I suspect that it won't be too long before you see more and more immigration starting again, which, you know, for business owners that need people to come in to do jobs, maybe for business owners, for farmers, for all of those sort of industries, maybe hospitality, restaurants that need foreign workers to come over. I suspect they're going to be coming again in greater numbers. I don't think Boris was ever really interested in reducing immigration. They are needed to help grow the economy. So I think that'd be an interesting area to watch, because it looks like the tide might be turning on that. You know, I suspect there's a few years before sort of public opinion starts to move on it. You know, I think the politicians and the ministers obviously want to grow the economy. They want to sort of get all these industries moving. So I suspect immigration will start to increase again. Hope you found some use in that video and it's given you some ideas to help with all of these increases that are coming. Help a little bit with your wallet and the amount of money that's coming out of it. Very recently, I had a lively debate with Nigel Farage. Lots of the issues that we have discussed on this video, I put to Nigel. He's got some really interesting ideas, and you can watch it here. That has been Mark Homer, over and out.